Hello, this is Hunter McDermott with another Anyone Can Play Guitar video. In this one we're going to be talking all about the pentatonic scale. Got a question about the pentatonic scales. There are some shapes that you often learn first or very early on when you're learning the guitar, and maybe the context or the theory behind what they are and how exactly they're applied is sometimes left out, because you can play the scale over rock tunes and blues tunes and have a lot of fun with it without really understanding too much about it, and that's good. That's a good thing. You should be able to just have fun making sounds, but this channel seems to be all about learning slightly more deeply about some of these things. So we'll talk about pentatonic scales today. We'll look at the difference between major and minor, and we'll look at the 5 patterns that people typically use and where they come from and all that good stuff. So here we go. We will start by defining what a pentatonic scale is. As the name suggests, the prefix pent means 5, and tonic would be another word for tone, and tone is another word for note. So that's my connection that I make. You've got a 5-note scale. So like with everything we've done so far, we can understand what the pentatonic scale is by starting with the major scale. I think it's an important place to start as a baseline for understanding everything that comes from it. So here we have our C major scale. I like to use C as an example just because it doesn't have any sharps or flats. Just kind of keeps it a little bit cleaner and easier to understand, I'm hoping. So the way we came up with this is by starting with a root note. In this case we have C, and then we went through a series of steps. So we went through a series of whole steps and half steps. So from C as our starting point, to get the next note of the major scale, we have to go up by a whole step. And then D to E is a whole step, and then we have a half step to E to F, a whole step from F to G, a whole step from G to A, a whole step from A to B, and then a half step brings us back around to where we started. And from our music theory basics videos, you should know this as the major scale, and this part as the major scale formula. And what that means is, I started with C in this example. You can start with G or B flat or C sharp or whatever note you want, and go through this series of steps, and you'll come up with that major scale. So when we're talking about a pentatonic scale, what we want to do is eliminate these little half-step jumps here. So if we're starting with C, D, E, those are all whole step jumps. And then we have this half step here from E to F. So when we're formulating our pentatonic scale, we're just going to eliminate this F. So we're getting rid of this. Well, let's see. We'll leave that for now. So we're getting rid of this F note. All right, and we pick up where we left off. So G, we have a whole step to A and a whole step to B, and then a half step to C. But in this case, we've already included the C note at the beginning, so we're not going to eliminate the C. Instead, we'll eliminate the other side of the half step jump, which is B in this case. So what we're left with is a group of 5 unique notes, C, D, E, G, A, and then C again at the end there. But 5 unique notes, and that makes up the major pentatonic scale. So that's all there really is to formulating it. You're taking a major scale and you're eliminating the 4th note and the 7th note, and you get the pentatonic scale. So what this is doing for us, why this scale is so common, and is often one of the earlier things that you learn, is by removing these half steps, we're creating these larger gaps, these larger steps here. So instead of a half step and then a whole step with notes in between, we're just jumping 1.5 steps straight to that next note, and then 1.5 steps here. So this has the effect of removing these small step jumps that can often create dissonance. In fact, like the F and B notes together themselves create something called a tritone, which is like the definition of dissonance. So by eliminating those notes and that interval, and then spreading apart the notes that we do have, so C, D, E, and then we're making a bigger jump to G and then A to C, we're just spreading things out a little bit more, playing fewer notes. The fewer notes you play, the fewer collisions you might encounter, the more space you're creating, fewer moving parts kind of thing, with less to worry with. There's less chance of potentially hitting sounds that are not pleasing to the ear. So that's the major pentatonic scale. So let's take a look at how we arrived at that. Let's clear this off here. So we'll start with our major scale. I encourage you to take a look at the major scale video series that I did for coming up with this collection of notes here. So the red notes are highlighting the roots. So if this is C, then we go up a whole step and that's D, and then we skip strings to get our E, and then our F, G, A, B, and then we're back to C. So what that looks like on the guitar would be up at the 8th fret. That's the highlighted note here. That's the C. And then you can keep going. Alright, again, all that is outlined in more depth in those major scale videos, but that's what the C major scale looks like. One of the patterns, there are 5. So to make this a pentatonic scale, what we're going to do is go through here and just eliminate the 4th and 7th, any instances of 4s and 7s. So again, this is C, D, E, F, so we're going to eliminate that F. G, A, B, so we're eliminating the B. C, D, E, F, get rid of that. G, A, B, C, D, and then down here below the C, to start the scale, we have a B note, which is a 7, so we can eliminate that as well. Alright, so what we end up with is this. Which is your C major pentatonic scale. Alright, so the easiest application for this would be any place where you can play your C major scale. For example, we'll play a chord progression in the key of C. So C major, of course, we'll work over it. Standpoint. We don't have to think quite so deeply about the notes of the scale and the notes of the chords and worry too much about which notes sound good or don't sound good. It's kind of just like this will sound good. It's kind of a catch-all scale. So that's, I think, in my opinion, why the pentatonic scale, one of two reasons why the pentatonic scale is so popular. One, it just, by eliminating those 2 notes, you're making it more general purpose. It works better over more things, so it's just easier to use without having to analyze too much. And then 2, by eliminating those extra notes, you end up with a simpler shape, right? You've only got 2 notes per string instead of occasionally 3. Just fewer notes to worry about. All right, so that would be pattern 1 of your pentatonic scale. So if we look at our major scales patterns again, and we start with our second one, so this will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe I got that right. Let's see. Yeah, so that's like this. So what this is it's still a C major scale in this example, but instead of starting on the second note, or on the first note, I'm starting on the second note, which is D. But my roots are still C notes. So I'm still playing a C major scale, it's just not starting and ending on the root. And again, I cover this in the major scale videos. So here's the second pattern of your major scales. So if we do the same thing and eliminate the 4s and 7s, we'll get the next pattern. So here's the second note, third, fourth, so we get rid of that. 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you end up with this, starting on, in this case, a D note, because that's the second note of our C major scale. You can still kind of hear how that C jumps out as an anchor point. If I stop on the D, it kind of sounds like it's not really resolved. So that's where those roots, it's still, even though it's not starting and ending with C, it's still kind of, our ear is still looking for those C notes, those root notes from where we, our point of context there. All right, so that's the second pattern of your pentatonic scale. So let's go through the next 3 here. So pattern 3, major scale, we could do this. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this case, this is the third pattern of the major scale, so it starts on the third note of the major scale, so C, D, E. Alright, and we'll do the same thing here, so 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that gives us the third major pentatonic pattern. So there's our root still. Alright, so there's pattern 3. And now let's look at pattern 4. So the pattern 4 of our major scales will start on not the fourth note of the scale. So we talked about this in the major scale videos. There are 7 notes of the major scale, but at least in the caged system of creating scale shapes, which is what I favor, we don't have 7 shapes. In some systems there are, but in my system there are 5. So it kind of adheres back to the principle of the pentatonic scale in that we're dealing with a 7-note scale, but we only have 5 positions because we're building it off of the 1, 2, 3, and then we're skipping that 4, building a pattern off of the 5, and building a pattern off of the 6, skipping the 7. And I talked about why that is in those videos. So anyway, in this case, a C major scale, pattern 4, would start on the 5th note of the scale, which is G. So that's 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Don't want to get this wrong. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then 7 would be way up here, but we're not going to worry about that because that kind of pulls us out of position. So that's this, starting on the 5th note of the C major scale. Alright, same thing here. So 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, that gives us this shape here. And I'm intentionally not providing the fingering like I did with the major scale. I could provide specific fingerings that I tend to use, but I even don't really use the same thing all the time. So like you saw in this one, I started with my second finger 2, 4, 2, 4, 1, 4, and then I shifted 1, 3, 1, 3, and then when I came back down, I did 1, 4, 1, 4, or I do 3, 1, 3, 1. So I'm not going to worry too much about the specific fingering for this, and I don't think you really need to either. You should be adaptable with your fingering depending on what you're trying to play. If you're playing the scale, play it however you want. If you're playing the scale and you find that you can't hit something that you needed to hit because you ran out of fingers, then you make an adjustment to make that possible. Don't sweat it too much. Alright, so that's pattern 4 of our pentatonic scales. So we have one pattern left, and this is going to be based on our 5th major scale pattern, and that starts on the 6th note of the major scale. So that would be A in this case. So that's 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. There we go. So that would be this. We'll do this last example. So this is 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And hey, look at that. I bet you have seen this before. If you haven't seen any other ones, you've at least seen this one. Alright, so this is the 5th pattern of the C major pentatonic scale, and it's based off of the 5th pattern of the C major scale, the full C major scale. So taking a look at this kind of gets to the heart of, I believe, the question that was asked that spawned this discussion, which is, this is often taught as the A minor pentatonic scale, not as the C major scale. In this particular case, if we're starting on the 5th fret of the guitar, of the 6th string there. So this gets to the other half of this discussion. So far we've been talking about the C major pentatonic scale, but as we learned from our natural minor video, there's something called relative minor, and that indicates within every major scale there is a minor scale hiding within it. Without making any modifications to the specific notes that are in the scale, we can find a minor scale built inside of there. So the way we do that is we take the major scale and find the 6th degree of that scale, and that will give us our answer. So for example, if we have a C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, the 6th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is A. Oops. Is A, so that would be the A minor scale. So if we take all the same notes, but we just start and end them on A instead of C, and what we're left with is the A natural minor scale. So you can see that none of the notes are different. The only thing that's different is the order. This one starts on C and ends on C. This starts on A and ends on A. That's it. That's really the only appreciable difference there. So what that means is, over here I've shared this shape as the fifth position of the C major pentatonic scale. But what you have to understand is that anytime you're dealing with C major, you're also dealing with A minor. It's the same thing. The difference is in how it's applied, like over what chord progression or tune it's applied. So when you see this pattern, you are seeing two things. You're seeing, one, the A minor pentatonic scale, and two, the C major pentatonic scale. So in your mind, you have to understand that those are one and the same as far as the actual fingering patterns are concerned. So in fact, all 5 of the pentatonic positions that I've shown you today are also the 5 positions of the A minor pentatonic scale, because they're the same positions, they're the same things. All right, so again, the important distinction comes with how they're applied. So if I'm going to play this shape over the chord progression that I recorded earlier, which is based on C major, then we'll hear what it sounds like. Right? So because the chord progression starts with C major and uses a lot of these major chords, it just kind of has a general major sound to it, then when I play this shape, and when I play any of the shapes, the notes that are going to pop out are going to be these C notes. It's going to kind of want to resolve back to that C note, not to an A. Right? If I try to resolve a phrase on an A, sound bad, right? That note doesn't sound like it doesn't belong, but it kind of lacks that sense of finality or rest, right? We haven't really come to a satisfying conclusion because we're playing a C major, not an A minor. That's the difference. It's in the way it sounds, not what it looks like on paper. All right, so then to illustrate the minor side of things, if I play a chord progression in the key of A minor, sounds nice. So in that case, what I was highlighting were the A notes, which in this case would be this note here, and this note here, because those are the A notes that occur in that shape. So the shape is the same, right? But the notes that are highlighted depend on the chord progression that you're playing. If you're in major, the C notes that are going to pop out, you're technically playing a C major pentatonic. If you're in a minor key, you're technically playing an A minor pentatonic. So that's what I want to clear up with this video, is that we have 5 shapes, and those 5 shapes are both major and minor, and the difference is how they're applied. Often you'll learn this position first as the A minor pentatonic scale, but you have to also understand that it's C major pentatonic, and I hope I've illustrated how that is also a major pentatonic scale. So I think what would be cool to take a look at in the future is some different ways we can utilize the pentatonic scales in more sophisticated ways. Often you'll learn your pentatonic scale and it works great over like a blues. It'd be nice to talk a little bit more about why that works, and plenty of other cases where a pentatonic scale can be used strategically to highlight different notes of the scale over whatever chord progression you're playing, and to come up with all kinds of cool sounds just by using the same 5 shapes that you already know, just using them in slightly different ways. But I'll reserve that for another discussion. For now, I want you to memorize and practice the 5 shapes that you've seen here, if you haven't already. And then I want you to understand how we got to those 5 shapes, right? We took the 5 major scale patterns that I've already talked about in a previous video, and we looked at the theory behind how do we go from major to pentatonic, which is in this case by eliminating the 4th and 7th notes of the major scale. And then we looked at how that, like, we visualized it. Here's the scale, here's what it looks like when we eliminate those notes, and here's the pattern that we're left with. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to take the major scale shape and the pentatonic scale shape and understand how you got from one to the other, and you can see that they have a lot of overlap, right? It's a lot of the same notes, just in the pentatonic case, we're just eliminating a couple of them. All right, so for the time being, learn those scale shapes, practice them, and then practice playing all of those shapes over both major chord progressions and their relative minors. You just do some practicing, playing, and having fun with them, but listening and recognizing how those how the difference in sound between major and minor. To understand that, hey, you're playing the same exact scale, but over one chord progression it sounds a certain way, and over another chord progression it sounds a different way, right? It doesn't matter that the scale is the same. It matters that the chord progression is different. That's what makes the scale sound different, even though it's not actually changing. Alright, well, so that's it for that pentatonic scale discussion. If you have any questions, please leave them for me, or any comments. Shoot me an email. I'll throw the email up on the screen. If you have any questions, I prefer to get them in email form, that way I can not lose them, and then come back a little bit later and potentially do a video if it seems like a topic that I think will be useful to a lot of people. So please send me those, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.